You know that pain that's so intense it seems to seep through your pores and become part of your blood. I lived with it for 7 whole years, a pain that started in my back, ran up my spine, and lodged in my throat every time I heard the key turn in the door at 6 p.m. in the evening. And along with the sound of that key came fear. A fear that even today, at 71 years old, wakes me up sweating in the middle of the night. Good morning to everyone watching. Before I begin my story, I want to share some exciting news. My name is Mary Payne, but folks here in Riverdale, Kentucky, know me as Grandma Mary's Candies. I make fudge, peon pralines, and peanut brittle that everyone says is the best in the region. I've had my little stand at the town square farmers market for over 40 years. Who would have thought, right? The little girl who once didn't know if she'd live to see the next day is now known for making sweets that bring joy to children. I was born in 1954 in a little yellow house at the end of Maple Street, in the poorer part of Riverdale, small town where everybody knew everybody, or at least thought they did, because secrets stayed well hidden behind closed doors. And our yellow house, with its wooden windows always shut, kept the worst ones. My father, Mr. James, worked for the county as an inspector, a respected man in town with a firm hand for pounding the table, a deep voice that made the floor tremble. He went to church every Sunday, sat in the front row, sang hymns louder than everyone else. He was the first to arrive at neighborhood meetings, the last to leave the corner bar. A man of his word, they said. An exemplary family man? My mother, Mrs. Delane, was an elementary school teacher, hair always tied in a tight bun, dress below the knee, nails cut short. She had a rigid posture, a way of looking over her glasses that made any misbehaving student return to their place. At home she was quiet, obedient, like my father's shadow. A shadow that grew and shrank according to his mood. It was just the 3 of us in the yellow house. My mother had other children, but none survived. I was the only one who made it. God's miracle, she said. Sometimes I think the real miracle would have been not surviving. It would have spared a lot of pain. The house was simple but clean. I remember the smell of floor polish, the shine of the few pieces of furniture, the crocheted doilies that my mother made to cover every surface. There was a backyard with some apple trees, a cherry tree, and a laundry tub where I played on hot days. The yellow house, my personal heaven and hell. Until I was 7, my life was normal. I went to school, played with the neighbors, helped my mother with small tasks. My father was strict, gave me a slap when I disobeyed, but nothing unusual for the time. That's how children were raised back then, with slaps, with belts, with switches from the willow tree. Nobody questioned it. But everything changed when I turned 8. I remember the exact day. It was my birthday. I got a blue dress with white polka dots and a rag doll that my mother made in secret. I was so happy that I didn't notice the different look in my father's eyes during lunch. A look that I later learned to recognize, the look of someone planning. That night, my mother went to a prayer meeting at church. It was common. Every first Friday of the month, there was a prayer vigil, and she never missed it. I was left alone with my father, something that had happened before. Usually he would send me to bed early and stay in the living room listening to the radio. But that day was different. "Come here, Mary," he called from the kitchen. "Come help your dad." I went with my new doll under my arm. He was leaning against the sink looking at the wood stove. "Look at this sink, girl. It's dirty. Your mother didn't wash it properly." I looked at the sink. To me, it seemed clean, but disagreeing with my father wasn't an option. "I'll tell Mum when she gets back," I said quietly. "No, you're going to wash it now." I tried to explain that I was too small, that I couldn't reach properly, that the cold water from the faucet hurt my fingers in that mild Kentucky winter, but it was no use. I climbed on a stool, started washing the few dishes. I did the best I could, but like any 8-year-old, I did childish things. Spilled water, left soap on the dishes, didn't dry them properly. That's when it began. "See why your mother never wanted other children after you," Because she saw that you're good for nothing. The words hurt more than any slap. I lowered my head, continued trying to clean. Tears blurred my vision. You can't even do this right. Useless. Do you know what happens to useless girls? They deserve punishment. He grabbed the broom that stood in the corner of the kitchen. A straw broom with a wooden handle. I thought he was going to hit me with it on my legs, as he had done before. But that's not what happened. Take off your clothes. I froze. I didn't quite understand. Why would an 8-year-old girl take off her clothes in the kitchen? What's the matter? Are you deaf? Take off your clothes. Now fear paralyzed me. I hugged the doll tighter. Dad, it's cold. Take off those clothes. The shout was so loud that I dropped the doll on the floor. With trembling hands, I took off my new dress. I stood in just my underwear, hunched over, trying to cover myself with my skinny arms. Everything I took them off. And there, naked in the middle of the kitchen, I felt a shame I had never felt before. A shame mixed with fear, with confusion. Why would a father want to see his daughter like this? He took the broom. He pressed the wooden handle against my stomach, started moving it down. Slowly, I felt the cold of the wood on my skin. I closed my eyes. Look at me. I couldn't. I kept my eyes closed, my body trembling. Look at me. I opened my eyes. I saw a man who was no longer my father. He was a monster with his face. A monster with hungry eyes. What happened next I won't describe in detail. Not out of shame. I washed that away a long time ago. But because there are children watching this video and I don't want to put in their little heads the images that still live in mine, I'll just say that it hurt. It hurt so much I thought I was going to die. The broom handle. He used it in a way that no object should ever be used, that no child should ever feel, that no father should ever do. When it was over, I was bleeding. He threw my clothes on top of me. If you tell anyone, I'll kill you and your mother. Now clean up this floor. I could barely stand. I cleaned my own blood from the kitchen floor while he went back to the living room to the radio as if nothing had happened. As if he hadn't just destroyed his daughter minutes before. I dragged myself to my room, wrapped myself in the blanket, cried until I had no more tears. The physical pain was terrible, but the pain in my soul was worse because I didn't understand what had I done so wrong. Why would my father, who was supposed to protect me, do that? When my mother came back, I thought about telling her. She came into my room, saw that I was awake. What is it, girl? Can't sleep. I opened my mouth, but the words wouldn't come out. The fear was greater. What if he carried out his threat? What if he killed us? I ended up just shaking my head. Then go to sleep. You have school tomorrow. And she left, closing the door. Just like that. She didn't see my tears, didn't notice my fear, or pretended not to notice. That night, something died inside me. Trust, security, childhood. I thought it was a one-time thing. Punishment for not washing the sink, right? But I was wrong. In the weeks that followed, whenever my mother went out, he found a way. There was always an excuse. The house wasn't clean. I came home late from school. My grades weren't good enough. Get the broom, he would say. And I obeyed, because what else could an 8-year-old girl do? A little girl against a grown man. The worst came when I discovered that my mother knew, or at least suspected. One night I came home from school with my skirt dirty with mud because I had fallen on the way. My father was furious. "To your room," he ordered. "You know what's going to happen." I went trembling. He came after me with the broom. But this time I noticed that the door didn't close completely. Through the crack while it was happening, while I was writhing in pain on the bed, I saw my mother standing in the hallway watching. Our eyes met in the middle of that horror. She saw my suffering, my silent plea. And do you know what she did? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. She closed the door slowly and left. That's when I understood the true betrayal. It wasn't just him. It was her, too. The person who was supposed to protect me, defend me, fight for me against the whole world had chosen to turn her back. That night I cried differently. not just from pain, but from complete abandonment. I was alone in the world, alone against the two of them. The abuse continued for months, years, more and more frequent, more and more violent. He no longer needed to wait for my mother to leave. He did it in front of her, and she watched, sometimes with downcast eyes, sometimes with a strange gleam in her eye, never interfering, never protecting me. Once I tried to resist. I was 10 years old by then, a little bigger, a little stronger. When he came with the broom, I pushed, tried to run. I managed to reach the front door, but my mother blocked the way. "Where do you think you're going, Mary? Let me out. Mom, please go back there. Your father isn't finished." And she pushed me back to him like someone returning a borrowed toy. Changes started happening in my body. My chest growing, my hips widening, my first period, which I hid as best I could. I was afraid it would make everything worse, and it did. Because now my father had a new fear, that I would get pregnant. "If you put a bastard in this world, I'll kill you," he threatened. "I'll throw you in a river where no one will ever find you." But he continued with the broom. He was just more careful, used it in other ways. He invented new ways to hurt without leaving evidence. At school, I became the strange girl. Quiet, always wearing long sleeves even in the heat, sitting at the back of the class. I didn't play at recess, didn't talk to anyone, never smiled. My grades, which had been good, plummeted. I couldn't concentrate. How can you pay attention to English when your whole body aches? How can you learn math when all you think about is the horror waiting for you at home? The teachers noticed something was wrong, of course, but back then it was different. Don't put a spoon in husband and wife fights. The saying applied to everything. Family problems were family problems. Only one teacher persisted. Mrs. Linda, the history teacher, short, always with her curly hair tied back, large glasses that slid down her nose. She had a different way of looking at me, not with pity, nor with disgust, with understanding. One day she called me after class. "Mary, is everything okay at home?" The simple question almost broke me. It had been so long since anyone had asked how I was. I opened my mouth to answer yes, as I always did, but I couldn't. The tears came uncontrolled. "No," I finally answered. "Nothing is okay." But I didn't say more. Not that day. The fear was still greater than the pain. The fear of what he would do if he knew I had spoken. The fear that they wouldn't believe me. After all, who would believe a girl against two respected adults in town? "If you need to talk, I'm here," she said simply. And for the first time in years, I felt that I wasn't completely alone. I was 13 years old by then. 5 years of daily abuse. 5 years of having my childhood stolen, my body violated, my soul broken. 5 years watching my own mother condone my torment. 5 years wanting to die every night, and waking up disappointed to still be alive the next morning. That's when everything got even worse. The yellow house was no longer just my hell. It had become my complete prison. My father began to lock the doors when he left to forbid me from talking to anyone. The broom, always the same one, leaning in the corner of the kitchen as a constant threat. I would look at it and tremble even when I was alone. I began to have terrible nightmares. I would wake up screaming, sweating. Sometimes I wet the bed. At 13 years old, which only gave more reason for punishments at school, I barely spoke. I barely lived. But a spark of anger began to grow inside me, an anger that was small at first but grew each day. Anger at the injustice, the pain, the betrayal. Anger that turned into courage when I realized one thing. If it continued like this, I wouldn't survive. It was that simple. Either I spoke up or I would die. It was on a Wednesday that everything changed. An ordinary Wednesday. Blue sky, scorching heat. The broom had been used the night before after I dropped a glass in the kitchen. I could barely sit in the school chair. I was in so much pain. Mrs. Linda noticed. She noticed the way I moved. Uncomfortable. the way I held back tears. At the end of class, she asked me to stay again. This time, she locked the classroom door. "Mary, what's happening in your home?" I remained silent, looking at the floor. "Mary, look at me." I looked. I saw in her eyes something I had never seen in my mother's eyes. Genuine compassion. No one deserves to suffer, Mary. No one, especially not a child. If someone is hurting you, you can tell me. I will help you. And then, after 5 years of silence, I spoke. The words came like a flood. Uncontrolled, dirty, devastating. I told her everything, the broom, the blood, the pain, the mother who watched the constant fear, the threats, everything. She listened without interrupting, without judging. When I finished, exhausted, she had tears in her eyes. "I believe you were the 3 most important words I had ever heard in my life. I believe you, and we're going to fix this." That afternoon, on the way back to the Yellow House, I felt something different in my chest. I didn't know the name of it yet. Only later did I understand that it was hope. Do you know what betrayal is? Betrayal isn't just the story of a husband who cheats. Betrayal is when someone who should protect you turns their back when you need them most. It's worse than any slap. It's a stab wound that doesn't heal. That's what I experienced with my own mother, Elaine, a woman who taught the alphabet to hundreds of children in Riverdale, but who couldn't teach her husband that their daughter wasn't an object. A woman who said the rosary every day, but closed her eyes to the sin happening under her own roof. At first, I thought she didn't know that she didn't notice. How could a mother see her 8-year-old daughter limping in pain and not ask anything? How could she see the sheet stained with blood and pretend it was normal? I made up 1,000 excuses for her in my head. That maybe she didn't see, that maybe she didn't understand, that maybe she was afraid too. But that night, when our eyes met through the crack in the door while my father was using the broom, all the excuses died. She knew. She had always known. Back then, I had just turned 10. It had been almost 2 years of daily abuse. My child's body already showed marks, not just the bruises that faded, but the invisible ones that never went away. The way I would shrink when someone raised their voice. The habit of sleeping under the bed, not on top of it. The dread of brooms, of doors closing, of the sound of a belt. It was around that time that my mother began to participate more actively. Not in the abuse itself, only my father did that, but in the preparation, the logistics, the aftermath, as if it were part of the household routine, like washing dishes or sweeping the floor. "Mary, go take a bath. Your father is coming soon." She said this with the same voice she used to tell me to do my homework, casual, as if it were normal. As if all the houses on the street had the same disgusting routine. I obeyed. What else could I do? I had nowhere to escape to, nowhere to run. The house was small, the windows locked, the door with a key, and even if I managed to get out, where would I go? We were isolated. I had no family nearby, no close friends. I only had school. And even there, I was the weird girl nobody wanted around. One afternoon, I came home from school a little late. I had been delayed because the teacher asked me to stay and clean the blackboard, a small punishment for falling asleep in class. When I entered the house, my mother was in the living room knitting as if nothing was wrong. But I sensed it in the air, that heavy smell of trouble to come. "Your father is waiting in the bedroom." I stopped in the middle of the living room, my backpack slipping from my shoulders, fear freezing my stomach. "Mum, please." "I was only late because I don't care. He's waiting. Go now before it gets worse." Worse, as if there were a light version of that horror. "Mum," I tried again, my voice choked. "Why do you let it happen? Why don't you help me?" She finally raised her eyes from her knitting, but I didn't see love there. I saw something else. Irritation. Help. "You think you deserve help? If you were a good daughter, obedient, he wouldn't need to correct you." Correct. That's what she called it, as if it were an adjustment, a course correction. As if shoving a broom handle into a child were a pedagogical method. But Mom, this isn't normal, this hurts. Dad shouldn't. I didn't finish. The slap came quickly, stinging. She had never hit me before. She had many flaws, but physical violence wasn't one of them until that day. Shut up. You think it's easy? You think it's easy for me? He's your father. He has the right. And you? You provoke him. With that body that way, I cowered. Tears streaming down. She was saying it was my fault, that I, a 10-year-old child, provoked it, that I deserved it, that it was normal. Now go. Don't make him wait any longer. It was the first time she had raised her hand to me. It wasn't the last. From then on, her complicity became more explicit. She began to prepare the ground, would make me take a bath beforehand, ensure that I was presentable for my father. She would make the bed afterward, wash the stained sheets, treat the most visible injuries so no one at school would notice. It was as if there were two monsters in the house now, not one. There was one time I remember well when I got sick. High fever, body aching all over, probably a bad flu, the kind that knocks anyone down. I thought that at least on that day, I would have peace. My mother made tea, put a compress on my forehead. For a moment, I felt that care that every child deserves. I closed my eyes, almost relieved. That's when my father came into the room. I felt the mattress sink with his weight as he sat down. I opened my eyes, silently, begging my mother, begging that at least this once, just once, she would protect me. Do you know what she did? She left, closed the door behind her, left me there, burning with fever, too weak to fight. That night, the broom came even though I was sick. In fact, it was worse because he said he needed to get the sickness out of me, that it was the only way, that it was for my own good. When it was over, my fever had gotten worse. I shook. I was delirious. I heard my mother arguing with him on the other side of the door. James, you're going to kill the girl like this. And then what? How do you explain it to people? It wasn't concern for me. It was fear of the scandal, of what the neighbours would say. To her, I wasn't even a person. I was just a potential public shame. I was bedridden for a week. The school sent a note asking about my absence. My mother replied in neat handwriting. Mary has a bad flu. She'll be back soon. Signed and stamped as if it were an official document. When I returned, I was thinner, paler, quieter, if that was possible. Mrs. Linda looked at me differently. I felt that she noticed something was wrong, but I still didn't have the courage to speak. Not yet. At 11, I tried to run away for the first time. I gathered a few things in a grocery bag, a change of clothes, an old toothbrush, a rag doll I'd had since I was little. I waited for them to fall asleep and tried to open my bedroom window. It was nailed shut. I tried the front door, locked, key in their bedroom. I tried the kitchen. Same thing. The entire house was a prison. It doesn't surprise me that no one ever suspected anything. No one could get in. I couldn't get out. Perfect for what was happening in there. I cried silently, sitting on the kitchen floor, the pathetic bag in my lap. There was no way out. There never would be. That's when I noticed the broom there, leaning in the corner as always, the instrument of my torment, his weapon against me. I felt a hatred I had never felt before. A hatred burning inside, consuming me. I grabbed the broom. I thought about breaking it, about throwing it in the yard, about hiding it, anything to have one night of peace. But the second I touched it, I heard footsteps. What are you doing? My father standing in the kitchen doorway in his pajamas, dishevelled hair, bloodshot eyes. He had woken up to get water, and he found me there with the broom in my hand. What happened next was the worst yet. It wasn't just the broom. It was the belt. It was the slap. It was the punch. He beat me until I passed out. I woke up in the morning on the kitchen floor so bruised that I couldn't even open one of my eyes. My mother found me there. She looked, sighed. See what you do? See what you cause? The blame. Always the blame. As if I, a child, were responsible for his sickness. As if I had chosen it. I didn't go to school that day or the next. I only went back when the bruises were less visible. They made up a story that I had fallen down the stairs at home. Stairs that didn't even exist. Our house was one story, but nobody questioned it. Her complicity became more and more explicit with time. It wasn't just omission. It was active participation. She began to create situations, pretexts. She would complain to my father that I hadn't swept the yard properly, that I had answered back, that I had taken too long to do my homework. Mary needs correction, James. That was their code. Correction. Disgusting. I began to realize that she liked it. Not what happened itself. At least I want to believe that. But the power it gave her. To see me being punished for things that weren't even wrong. To see me suffering while she watched. Superior, correct, clean. One afternoon I came home from school and she was different. Agitated, dressed up. She had put on her good dress, which she normally only wore to church. "Today we're going to your Aunt Margaret's house," she announced. "Your father will work until late. We too will have dinner there. Aunt Margaret wasn't even a real aunt. She was a friend of hers who lived on the other side of town. We rarely went there. I didn't understand the sudden change, but I felt a small hope. A night away from home, a night without him, a night of peace. I got ready quickly, combed my hair, even tried to smile. The idea of leaving those walls even for a few hours was like a glass of water in the desert. We were almost leaving when my father arrived earlier than usual. He looked at the two of us, already ready to leave. "Where do you two think you're going?" "To Margaret's," my mother answered, her voice already submissive. "Just for dinner. We'll be back early." "No, I changed my mind. I need both of you here." And that was it. She didn't even question it. She took off her hat, her little coat, went back to the kitchen to prepare dinner, as if it had no importance at all. As if the promise of a night of relief for her daughter meant nothing. That night I cried into my pillow until I fell asleep. Not because of the abuse. It had already happened, as it did almost every night. I cried because of the betrayal, because of the ease with which she gave up protecting me, because of the certainty that between me and him, she would always choose him. At 12, I had already lost any hope. I was living on autopilot. I would go to school, come home, get beaten, suffer the abuse, sleep, wake up, repeat everything like a zombie. The teachers noticed something was wrong. Of course, my grades, which weren't good already, became terrible. I barely spoke, barely ate, looked like a ghost walking the hallways. I remember once when the physical education teacher called my mother to school. I had refused to change clothes for the exercise. I didn't want anyone to see the bruises on my legs. The teacher thought it was strange, insisted I ended up crying in the corner of the court. "Mrs. James, Mary has been acting very strange. She doesn't participate, doesn't mix with the others today. She had a crisis in my class." Did something happen? I spied from the door, listening to the conversation in the teacher's room. I saw my mother, neat as always, perfect bun, clean nails, saintly face. Mary has always been a difficult girl teacher. Since she was little, she causes trouble. She's a liar, makes things up, seeks attention. But the bruises, she falls by herself, trips, bumps into things. I don't know where she got this clumsy way. Neither her father nor I are like that. The teacher seemed to want to say something else, but gave up. My mother had that way, of making people doubt what they were seeing, of turning the truth inside out with such conviction that even you yourself began to believe it. We went home in silence that day. When we arrived, she finally spoke. "Are you satisfied? You almost made me ashamed at school. What will they think of me? Of our family?" I didn't answer. There was nothing to say. Her shame was more important than my pain. It always was. That night, for the first time, she watched everything up close, sitting in the chair in the corner of the room, observing while my father used the broom, her eyes never leaving mine. A look of warning, of threat, a look that said, "See what happens when you try to tell someone?" It was the worst night of my life until then. Not because of the physical pain. I was already kind of numb to that by this point. It was worse because of the symbolism, because of the final confirmation that there was no one on my side, that the two of them together were an insurmountable wall. I never tried to tell anyone at school again. What for? My mother would deny it. She would make me seem crazy, a liar, problematic, and the punishment would be worse. So I closed up even more, became an empty shell. I learned to leave my body during the abuse to pretend that I was somewhere else, that I was someone else. I learned not to cry because the tears only gave them more pleasure. I learned to be invisible even while being visible. Time passed. 12 years old, 13 years old, my body changing, the abuse getting worse. Now there was the new concern, pregnancy. My father took precautions in his way, brutal, painful, humiliating methods. My mother helped, checking my underwear every month to make sure I had men rated. If you turn up pregnant, I'll throw you out on the street, she threatened, as if it were my choice, as if I had control over anything in my life. When I turned 13, something changed, not in the situation. It remained the same. But in me, I began to feel a different anger. An anger that wasn't just desperation, but something deeper, more dangerous. I began to think of ways to end it all the ways. I thought about killing myself. I came very close several times. I saved pills that my mother took for her blood pressure. I stole a bottle of rat poison that my father kept in the garage cabinet. I would look at the Cumberland River when I passed over the bridge, imagining the water swallowing me, taking me far away. But something stopped me. It wasn't fear of dying. I was practically living dead anyway. It was something else. A stubbornness, a small but persistent certainty that I didn't deserve that end, that they were the ones who deserved to pay, not me. It was at the full age of 13 that I finally understood a crucial detail of my prison. My mother wasn't a victim alongside me. She was a jailer. She was an accomplice. She didn't help my father despite loving me. She helped because she hated me. Maybe because I was living proof of the problems in their marriage. Maybe because I was the reason she couldn't leave that house and restart her life. Maybe because deep down she simply didn't have within her what they call maternal love. The reason didn't matter. The fact was that she wasn't on my side. She never was, and she never would be. This perception, as painful as it was liberating because I understood that I couldn't count on her to get out of that situation, that I needed to find another way out, another person, another form. And that's when I remembered Mrs. Linda's words. If you need to talk, I'm here. Was she really there? Was someone somewhere in the world really on my side? Would it be worth the risk? I didn't have much to lose. If I continued in that house with those monsters, I wouldn't survive much longer. If I tried to speak and it went wrong, well, at least I would have tried. That night, lying in bed after another abuse, I made my decision. I was going to talk to Mrs. Linda. I was going to tell her everything. No half words, no euphemisms, the naked, raw truth. The worst that could happen was that no one would believe me. The best I didn't even dare to imagine. Freedom seemed too distant a dream. I fell asleep with the decision made. The next day I would go all the way. What I didn't know was that Mrs. Linda had her own demons and her own weapons against them. Have you ever noticed how a decision can change everything? How a single yes or no can turn your life upside down? That's how it was on that Wednesday in April 1967. I, Mary Payne, with my 13 years on my back and the weight of the world on my soul, got out of bed determined to do what I had never done before, shout the truth. I woke up before the alarm clock rang. Not that I had slept much. Sleep had been a luxury I hadn't known for years. But that day there was a different tingling in my body, a mixture of fear and courage that I had never felt before. I got ready carefully. I chose the only skirt without patches that I had, the least faded blouse. I combed my hair slowly, looking in the cracked bathroom mirror. Who was that hollow-eyed girl staring back at me? I hardly recognized myself anymore. Mary, you're taking too long. My mother's voice came through the door, always inspecting, always controlling. I'm coming, I replied automatically. That's when I noticed something strange in my reflection, an expression I hadn't seen in a long time: determination. I looked like a different person. I looked older, stronger. I looked like someone who could, yes, change her own story. Breakfast was like all the others: dry bread, weak coffee, heavy silence. My father had already left for the county office. My mother was getting ready to go to the school where she taught. We ate without talking, as always. Before leaving, she gave me the usual instructions. Straight home after school. Don't talk to anyone on the way. If you're late, you know what awaits you. I nodded, lowered my head as I always did. But inside, for the first time, I thought, no, today I won't obey. Today, everything changes. The path to school never seemed so long. It was only about a 15-minute walk. But that day, each step seemed important, definitive, as if each one was taking me not just closer to school, but to freedom. I arrived earlier than usual. The hallways were still empty, the classrooms closed. I sat on the bench in the courtyard waiting. My hands were sweating. What if she didn't believe me? What if she told my mother? What if everything got even worse? The fear was real. I had good reasons to feel it, but the determination was greater. I had reached a point where the desperation was so great that any change, even for the worse, seemed better than continuing in that hell. The bell rang. Students began to arrive, noisy, free, so different from me. I observed those normal children with normal lives. Did any of them go through what I was going through? Were there others like me, trapped in prison houses with monster parents? The history class was only in the third period. I endured the first two classes on autopilot, answering when called, copying what was on the blackboard, existing without living. Finally, it came. Mrs. Linda entered the room, pile of books in her arms, glasses sliding down her nose. She greeted the class with her usual good humor. She began to talk about the Civil War, dates, battles, names. I didn't hear a word. My head was too busy rehearsing what I was going to say, how I was going to say it, planning each word of that conversation that could change everything. The class ended. The bell rang. It was now or never. While the other students noisily left for recess, I remained seated in my place, motionless, waiting for everyone to leave. Mrs. Linda noticed, of course. She looked at me over her glasses with that way she had of knowing things without needing to ask. When the last student left, she closed the door. She came to my desk, pulled up a chair, sat in front of me. "What is it, Mary? Do you want to talk?" I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Years of forced silence had locked my tongue. Years of threats made me hesitate. You don't need to be afraid," she said, her voice calm. "Whatever it is, you can tell me." I took a deep breath. It was now. "My father abuses me," I said all at once. "Has been for years." The words came out fast, almost without breathing. As if I stopped to think, I wouldn't be able to say them anymore. I expected to see shock on her face, disbelief, disgust, any reaction that normal people have when they hear something so horrible. But I didn't see any of that. I saw understanding, as if she already knew, or worse, as if she understood personally. "How does he do this, Mary? Can you tell me?" "It's important." It was the first time someone had asked me the details, without doubting me, without making me feel guilty, without questioning if I was making it up. And so I told her. I told her about the broom, about the years of pain, about my mother watching, participating. I told her about the threats, the constant fear, the prison that was my house. I told everything without filter, without stopping. The words came out like water from a dam that breaks, violent, uncontrollable, devastating. When I finished, I was breathless, exhausted, as if I had run a marathon. In a way, I had a 5-year marathon, and I had finally crossed a finish line. Mrs. Linder didn't say anything for a while. Her eyes behind those large glasses were teary. But it wasn't just sadness that I saw there. It was a controlled anger, an indignation. "I believe you," she finally said. Every word. 3 simple words that changed everything. I believe you when no one else believed, not even my own mother. That teacher I barely knew gave me what I needed most. Validation. "It's not your fault, Mary," she continued. "None of this is your fault. They are the monsters, not you," I cried. Not from pain, as I had cried so many times, but from relief, from an immense weight finally shared, from a truth finally told and accepted. "What happens now?" I asked between sobs. "Now we're going to get you out of there. Get me out of there?" The idea seemed so impossible, so distant from my reality, that I could hardly comprehend it. How? Where will I go? What if they don't let me? What if no one believes me? The questions came out uncontrolled, the fear returning mixed with a small but growing hope. "One thing at a time," she said firmly. "First, we need evidence." "Evidence?" "Yes. I know it's difficult, but we need to show what's happening. Your word against theirs. Unfortunately, it won't be enough." She was right. Of course, my mother was a respected teacher. My father a county employee. Exemplary citizens in everyone's eyes. Who would believe a troubled child against 2 upstanding adults? What kind of evidence? The bruises. We need to document them. And she hesitated as if she were making a difficult decision. "I need to tell you something, Mary. Something that few people know." I waited, curious, despite the fear. "When I was about your age, I went through something similar. It wasn't my father. It was my stepfather. And my mother, like yours, pretended not to see." My eyes widened. Mrs. Linder, the most respected teacher in the school, with her proper ways, her always prepared classes, her seemingly perfect life. "How did you get out? How did you manage?" She smiled a sad smile. "I didn't. Not in the right way. I ran away. I lived on the street for a while. I was hungry, cold. I ended up taken in by a family that let me sleep in the shed in the back in exchange for work. I studied in secret, got my GED, became a teacher, but I never reported it. I never saw justice done. And your stepfather, he died years later without ever paying for what he did. And my mother lived the rest of her life pretending that nothing happened. To this day, she avoids talking to me, the living reminder of her failure as a mother. I absorbed all that in silence. Mrs. Linder, my teacher, the strongest woman I knew, had also been an abused girl, had also suffered. And yet there she was, whole, helping others. That's why you took an interest in my case. Yes, I recognize the signs, the empty look, the bruises always explained away, the constant fear. I saw myself in you. And what do we do now? She adjusted her glasses, thoughtful. I won't let you follow the same path I did. I won't let you run away without direction, without protection. We're going to do it differently. We're going to do it the right way. The right way. Did that exist in cases like mine? I have a friend, a lawyer. He works with child abuse cases. I'm going to talk to him today. But we need evidence, Mary. Something concrete. I can show the bruises, I offered. I have marks everywhere. She nodded, her face serious. That helps. But ideally, we would catch them in the act. Have something they can't deny. Catch them in the act. The idea gave me chills. It meant going through one more abuse, one more session of horror with the broom. More pain. I'm afraid, I confessed. I know. And if you don't want to, we'll find another way. But think about this. This could be your only chance to really end this, to bring justice, not just for you, but maybe for other children they might hurt in the future. Other children. I had never thought about that. What if they adopted another child after I left? What if they did to another girl what they did to me? What do I need to do? She explained the plan to me. It was risky, dangerous, but it could work. Are you sure you want to do this? I won't lie to you. It's going to be difficult, having to go through it one more time. If it's the last time, it's worth it, I replied, with a firmness in my voice that I didn't recognize. If it's to end this once and for all, I can endure one more night. She squeezed my hand, a simple gesture of solidarity, the first genuinely affectionate human contact I had received in years. You are very brave, Mary. Braver than I was at your age. I didn't feel brave. I felt terrified, but also for the first time hopeful. I had a plan. I had an ally. I had a chance. The rest of the day passed in a blur. I went home after school as always. I did my homework, helped in the kitchen, behaved exactly as on any other day. Inside I was trembling. Inside I was counting the hours. My father arrived. We had dinner in silence as always. My mother talked about school, about a teachers' meeting. He talked about the county office, about a problem with the asphalt bid. Normal conversation, normal family conversation. The hypocrisy of it all, the theatre they put on, even for themselves, made me nauseous. How could they? How could they pretend we were an ordinary family when at night he came into my room with a broom in his hand? After dinner, they told me to take a bath and go to bed. I obeyed. I lay in bed, heart racing, hands sweating. Would it work? Would this really be my last night in that hell? Around 10, I heard his footsteps in the hallway, the creaking of the door opening, the sound of the broom leaning against the wall. Get up, his voice as always. Cold, authoritarian, of someone who knows he will be obeyed. I obeyed as always. I looked one last time at the window, at the night outside, at the freedom that perhaps finally was within reach. It was time to end it all. What happened in the next 2 hours was horrible as always. The difference is that this time, for the first time, it had a purpose. Each second of pain was a second closer to freedom. Each tear shed was fuel for my determination. And in the end, when it was all over, when he left the room satisfied with another night of torture, I didn't feel defeated as always. I felt victorious because I knew that this had been the last time. The last time that man touched me, the last time that broom hurt me, the last time the plan was in motion. And nothing would ever be the same. The next day I went to school as always. Except this time, I carried more than books in my backpack. I carried the evidence we needed, and the certainty that I was about to break the chains that had held me for so long. Mrs. Linda was waiting for me at the school door. In her eyes, I saw the same determination that I felt in mine. We were no longer just teacher and student. We were battle companions, survivors of a war that many pretended didn't exist. "Are you ready?" she asked. I took a deep breath. A whole world of possibilities opened up before me. A world without brooms, without pain, without betrayal, more than ready. Together we walked into the school away from the nightmare toward the freedom I had dreamed of for so long. The silenced girl finally had a voice, and this voice, after being quiet for so long, was ready to make noise. Some people say that hell is what comes after death, but I already knew hell in life, and that day I was ready to close its doors forever. I arrived at school with my body aching from the night before, but with a new strength inside me, backpack on my shoulders, not just with notebooks, but with the evidence that would change everything. I met with Mrs. Linda before the first class in a corner of the courtyard where no one could see us. "Did you manage?" she asked, concern etched on her wrinkled forehead. I took a wrapped cloth from my backpack, inside it the evidence we needed. A disgusting, terrible, but necessary piece of evidence. The same broom that had been used on me the night before with marks that left no doubt about what had happened. "My God," murmured Mrs. Linda, her eyes wide behind her glasses. "And he didn't notice it was missing. I replaced it with a similar one I found in the school's storage room last week. So far they haven't noticed. It had been a risky plan. For weeks I had observed the school's supply closet. I noticed that there were several old brooms there collecting dust. One day, when the janitor left it open, I took one, hid it in my backpack, took it home, and after the abuse the night before, I made the switch while everyone was sleeping. A dangerous operation that could have gone very wrong if someone had woken up. But they didn't wake up, and now we had the irrefutable evidence of what was happening in that yellow house. We have more. I showed her the recent bruises, the marks on my thighs, on my back, in places that no accidental fall could justify. I had taken hidden photos with the camera that Mrs. Linda had lent me days before. "You were very brave," she said, storing the evidence in a special folder. "Now it's my turn to do my part." We agreed on the next step. I would go home normally after school as if nothing had changed. I would follow the usual routine. Meanwhile, Mrs. Linda would take the evidence to her lawyer friend. They would go to the police, to the juvenile court, to whoever else was necessary. "How long will it take?" I asked, anxious. The idea of spending another night in that house gave me chills. "I'll do my best for it to be today. But it might take a little longer. It depends on the bureaucracy, the people on duty." "Can you hold on a bit longer?" I could. Of course I could. I had endured 5 years. I could endure a few more hours knowing it was close to the end. Just be careful not to let them notice anything different. Keep acting normally. If they suspect something has changed, she didn't need to complete the sentence. I knew what would happen if they suspected. I had the scar from the last escape attempt to remind me. I'll pretend nothing has changed. I promised. Do everything as always. School passed in a blur that day. I couldn't pay attention to anything. My mind was too occupied with what was to come, with the real possibility of liberation, with the fear that something would go wrong. When the bell rang for the last period, I felt a chill in my stomach. It was time to go back to the yellow house, perhaps for the last time. On the way, everything seemed different. The same streets as always, but seen with different eyes. The same neighbours waving, but with another perspective. Did they know? Did they suspect? Or did they really believe we were a common, normal, happy family? I arrived home at the usual time. My mother was already there, grading tests at the kitchen table. She looked at me over her glasses. "Get ready. Your father is coming home early today. People from the state capital are coming to visit." Visitors? That was rare. For a moment I wondered if it would complicate the plan. But maybe it would be better this way. With people in the house, they couldn't do anything to me. At least for one night, I would be safe. I got ready as ordered. I put on the blue dress I wore on special occasions. Actually, the only dress besides the school uniform that still fit me. I combed my hair, washed my face. In the mirror, I saw the same girl as always, but the eyes were different. They had a new sparkle. The sparkle of someone who knows they are about to be freed. My father arrived at 6, as announced with him a couple I had never seen before. A man in a suit, an elegant woman, people from the capital, as my mother had said. "This is Mary." My father introduced me, his hand on my shoulder squeezing too hard, a silent warning for me to behave. "Our daughter." "What a beautiful young lady," said the woman, smiling. "How old are you, dear?" 13, I replied as politely as I could. "Ah, the best age. You're almost a young woman." If she only knew, if she could imagine that this almost young woman had already lived through more horrors than many adults. Dinner was a perfect theatre performance. My mother served, smiling. My father told stories about the town, about local politics. The couple laughed, praised the food, asked questions, a scene of a normal family that made me want to throw up. At one point, I noticed that the man was observing me with curiosity, not the disgusting look I had seen in others, the look of predators, which my father also had. It was another kind of look, as if he were trying to solve a puzzle. "And you, Mary? Do you like school?" The question caught me by surprise. Rarely did anyone take an interest in what I thought or felt. "Yes, sir. I like to study." "Oh, what's your favourite subject?" "History," I replied without hesitation. Mrs. Linda's subject. The only class where I felt safe. Ah, history. Fundamental for understanding the present and building the future, isn't it? I nodded, not knowing exactly what to say. I wasn't used to normal conversations. Mary is going to be a teacher like her mother. My father interrupted, changing the direction of the conversation. She's already on that path. Isn't that right, daughter? We had never talked about this. We had never discussed my future. How could they? In their world, I had no future. I was just an object, a thing, a property. Yes, father, I replied, eyes lowered as expected. The conversation continued, now focused on other topics. Politics, economics, the governor's visit that was planned, adult topics that didn't include the silent girl sitting at the table. After dinner, I was sent to my room while they continued talking in the living room. I obeyed, relieved to be able to get out of that theatre. In the room, I sat on the bed, looking at the window. It was a clear, starry night. I wondered if soon I would be able to look at the same stars from another place, a place without fear. I was almost asleep when I heard a noise at the front door. Raised voices, someone knocking, heart racing. I approached the bedroom door trying to listen. What does this mean? My father's voice altered. You can't just enter my house like this. We have a warrant, Mr. Payne. An unfamiliar voice. Firm official. I held my breath. It was happening. The plan had worked. They had come to get me. The next few minutes were chaotic. Voices rising in volume, my mother crying, doors slamming, and then knocks on my bedroom door. Mary, are you in there? A female voice I didn't know. Yes, I replied, my voice trembling. Can you open the door, please? We're from Child Protective Services. We're here to help you. I opened the door with trembling hands. On the other side, a middle-aged woman, grey hair, gentle expression. Behind her, 2 police officers. Hello, Mary. My name is Dr. Helen. We've come to get you. Okay. You don't have to be afraid. You don't have to go back to this house if you don't want to. I couldn't answer. The tears came uncontrolled. Not from fear or sadness, but from relief. From liberation. Can you get your things? Whatever you want to take. I didn't have much. Some clothes, a school notebook, an old rag doll. Everything fit in a small bag. Is that all? Asked Dr. Helen, surprised at how little I had. It's all I need, I replied, honestly. In the living room, the scene was surreal. My father, always so powerful, so feared, was handcuffed. My mother cried in a corner, being questioned by another police officer. The couple of visitors, who I now understood weren't just ordinary visitors, observed everything with serious expressions. When they saw me, my parents reacted in opposite ways. My mother averted her gaze, unable to face me. My father glared at me, hatred overflowing. You liar! Ungrateful! After everything we did for you, be quiet, sir, one of the police officers ordered. You're already in a complicated enough situation. Dr. Helen led me through the house, a gentle hand on my back. We passed through the kitchen. I noticed that in the corner where the broom always was, there was now only an empty space. The evidence had been collected. At the exit, my eyes met my mother's one last time. I didn't see regret there, or love. I saw only fear. Fear of the scandal, of the shame, of what the neighbours would say. Even at the end, her concern wasn't with me. Let's go, Mary. Dr. Helen guided me to an official car parked in front of the house. I got in without looking back. The yellow house, my prison for so many years, became smaller and smaller in the rearview mirror. Along with it, a lifetime of pain. In the car, sitting among people I didn't even know, but who already treated me with more humanity than my own parents, I finally breathed a deep sigh as if I were breathing for the first time. Where are we going? I asked, realizing that I didn't know what would happen now. To the hospital first, explained Dr. Helen. We need you to be examined. Afterward, we'll take you to a safe place, a temporary shelter until we resolve your situation permanently. Hospital, shelter. Words that should scare me, but that sounded like music. Any place was better than the yellow house. And my parents? Your father will be detained. Your mother? Well, that will depend on the investigation, on your testimony too. My testimony. My words would finally have weight, would finally be heard, considered, believed. There's a teacher, I began hesitantly. Mrs. Linder, she helped me. I'd like to see her. Yes, we know Mrs. Linder. Actually, she's waiting for us at the hospital. It was she who brought your case to us. I smiled for the first time in a long time. Mrs. Linder had kept her promise. She had helped me escape in a way that she herself couldn't manage when she was young. The hospital was big, well lit, full of people. They took me to a reserved room where a doctor examined me carefully and respectfully. She took photos of the injuries, noted everything, asked difficult but necessary questions. When she finished, she said words I never forgot. You are very strong, Mary. Stronger than many adults I know. I didn't feel strong. I felt small, scared, lost. But also, for the first time in years, I felt safe. After the exam, they took me to another room, and there she was, Mrs. Linder, hair tied back as always, glasses on the tip of her nose, a tired but satisfied smile. You did it. I ran to hug her, something I had never done before. No, Mary, we did it. You did the hardest part. We stayed embraced for a while. Two survivors of the same kind of hell. 2 generations united by pain, but also by the hope of better days. What happened? I asked when we finally separated. How was everything so quick? She told me while we ate a snack that someone had brought. She told me that she took the broom and the photos to her lawyer friend, who was horrified that they went directly to the juvenile court where they found a judge sensitive to abuse cases, that the judge, seeing the irrefutable evidence, immediately issued a search and seizure order, a preventive arrest for my father, and a determination for my mother to leave the home until her level of involvement was clarified. And you know the couple who was at your house? They were social workers undercover. They were there to observe the family dynamics before the police arrived. It was a coincidence that they appeared just today. Your father had invited them for a meeting about a county project. It ended up being perfect for the timing of the operation. That's why the man looked at me in that strange way. He wasn't judging me. He was evaluating me, looking for signs of abuse, fear, suffering, and now what will happen to me? For now, you'll go to a shelter. But she hesitated as if she didn't know if she should continue. I talked to the judge. I asked for authorization to be your temporary guardian. If you want, of course. I was speechless. Live with Mrs. Linder. It was more than I could hope for, more than I dared to dream. You would do that for me. I would do it with you, Mary. It's not charity, it's justice. It's giving you the chance that I didn't have when I was in your situation. I bit my lips to not cry again. I had no more tears anyway. I was empty and full at the same time, empty of fear, full of possibilities. I want that. I want it very much. She smiled, that gentle smile that had given me hope from the beginning. Then we'll ask the judge. I'm sure she'll consider it seriously. That night I slept in a room at the shelter. It was simple with several beds. Other girls in situations similar to mine, but it was clean. It was safe. And for the first time in years, I slept without fear. I woke up with the sunlight coming through the window. For a moment, I was disoriented. Where was I? Why wasn't I in the dark room of the yellow house? And then I remembered. I was free. The nightmare was over. The other girls were already getting ready for breakfast. Some looked at me with curiosity, others with indifference. Each had their own stories, their own traumas. We were different, but also similar. Survivors. That day I was taken to formally testify at the Child Protection Unit. It was difficult, painful, telling everything once again to strangers, seeing their reactions of horror, of compassion, sometimes of doubt. But I did it. I told everything without omitting anything. The broom, the nights, my mother watching, the years of forced silence. When I finished, The detective, a middle-aged man who looked like a family father, said something that made an impression. "Your testimony will help convict them, Mary, but more importantly, it will help save other children. Your courage is opening doors for many other reports." I didn't feel brave. I just felt relieved. Relieved to finally be away from them, to finally be able to speak, to finally be heard. In the afternoon, I received an unexpected visit at the shelter, Dr. Helen, the social worker, accompanied by Mrs. Linda, and a woman who I soon discovered was the judge in my case. "Mary," said the judge after introductions, "I've analysed your case with urgency. Given the seriousness of the situation and the evident risk of keeping you in the family environment, I've granted temporary custody to Mrs. Linda. If you agree, of course." I looked at Mrs. Linda, who smiled, led nervously. She really wanted to take me in, care for me, be my family. "I agree, more than agree." The judge smiled, relieved. "Good. You can leave today. We need to continue the legal process. Of course, there will be more testimonies, hearings. Your parents have the right to defense, but you don't need to see them again. Unless you want to." I didn't want to. I never wanted to see those faces, hear those voices again. I wanted to forget, start over, be reborn. "Can we go?" I asked, anxious. "Yes," replied Mrs. Linda. "Let's go home." Home. The word had a new meaning now. It was no longer synonymous with fear, with pain, with prison. It was the promise of something different, of a new chance. I packed my few things and said goodbye to the other girls at the shelter. Some didn't react, too immersed in their own traumas. Others smiled, wished me luck. One, older, hugged me and whispered, "Don't forget about us when you're out there." I wouldn't forget. How could I? They were part of my story now, part of my journey in the car going to Mrs. Linda's house. I looked out the window. The streets seemed different. The entire town seemed different, more colourful, more alive, more full of possibilities. "Are you ready for a new life, Mary?" Mrs. Linda asked, looking at me in the rearview mirror. I took a deep breath. A life without brooms, without screams in the night, without maternal betrayals. A life with school, with dreams, with a future. I am more ready than ever. And so began my new journey. The path wouldn't be easy. I had a lot to process, a lot to heal, a lot to learn. But at least now I had a path out of hell toward the light, and for the first time since I could remember, I had hope. Hope that what I would live from now on would be better than what I had left behind. The yellow house was in the past, and the future finally seemed worth living for. If you asked me what freedom smells like, I would say it's the smell of wet earth after the rain. That's what I felt on my first day at Mrs. Linda's house when I woke up and saw the open window without locks, without bars, and the scent of the damp morning entered the room, the smell of a new beginning, of cleanliness, of a new life. Mrs. Linda's house wasn't big or luxurious, a simple 2-story house in the teacher's neighbourhood with 2 bedrooms, a small living room, a tight kitchen, and a backyard full of plants. But it was clean, bright, full of books piled in every corner. And most importantly, there were no monsters hiding behind the doors. The first days were strange. I didn't know how to behave in a normal house. I kept waiting for orders, for permission for everything, to go to the bathroom, to drink water, to sit down. On the second day, I accidentally broke a glass at lunch. I panicked, cowered completely, waiting for punishment. The broom, the scream. But none of that came. Just Mrs. Linda's calm voice. "Let me clean that up, dear. It's nothing. Glasses break. It's normal." I cried so much that day. Not because of the glass, because of the normality, because of the right to be just a girl who broke a glass. Not a who deserves punishment, as my father would say. The following weeks were about adaptation, about learning to live without fear, about understanding that not every adult wants to hurt you, that not every mother abandons, that not every father abuses. The first night I managed to sleep without nightmares was almost a month after the escape. I woke up rested, confused by the feeling of peace. I had dreamed of a field of flowers, not of the broom. It was so strange that I lay there for a long time trying to understand what was different. "That's how normal children sleep," said Mrs. Linda when I told her at breakfast. "It's your right, Mary. It always has been my right." What a strange concept for a girl who only knew duties, obligations, punishments. I went back to school after 2 weeks at home. It was hard to face the stares. The town was small. Everyone already knew the case of the county inspector, as they called it, the scandal of the moment. Some looked at me with pity, others with morbid curiosity, some even with anger, as if I had ruined my parents' lives, not the opposite. But there were also those who smiled, who offered silent support. A hand on the shoulder, a candy on the desk, a place saved at recess. Pain gradually turned into strength. Each day I spent at Mrs. Linda's house was one more day of healing. Each class, each meal without tension, each night without fear was rebuilding me. The case against my parents dragged on. Testimonies, hearings, expert examinations. The system was slow, especially for a small town in the 60s. My father's influence delayed everything even more. He had friends, acquaintances, people who owed him favors. "Don't give up," Mrs. Linda would say on the nights when the fear returned. "The truth will win." And it did. 6 months after my escape, my father was sentenced to 15 years in prison. My mother got 8 years as an accomplice. They were the first child abuse cases with such severe sentences in the region. A milestone, a victory, not just for me, but for other children who would come after. On the day of the sentence, I found out that 3 more girls had reported similar situations in their homes. "Your example gave them courage," said Dr. Helen when she came to visit us. "You opened a door that had been locked for a very long time." At 14, I started therapy. Mrs. Linda insisted, even though it was something uncommon at the time, "Body wounds heal on their own. Soul wounds need help," she explained. It was the most important decision of my recovery. In the sessions with Dr. Martha, a psychologist from Louisville who came to Riverdale bi-weekly, I could finally talk about everything. About the physical pain, about my mother's betrayal, about the guilt I still carried, even knowing I had done nothing wrong. "You didn't cause any of this, Mary," she repeated in each session. "You were a child. The responsibility was theirs." At first, I didn't believe it. Years of brainwashing are hard to clean. But gradually the truth sank in. It wasn't my fault. It never was. I was the victim, not the guilty one. The temporary custody became permanent on my 15th birthday. Mrs. Linda organised a small party, the first of my life. A simple cake, some school friends, an improvised decoration. They sang happy birthday, hugged me, made me feel that I was rebuilding a normal life, or at least as normal as possible. "After everything. From now on, you are officially my daughter," said Mrs. Linda, handing me the papers with the court decision. If you want, of course I did. Of course I did. That woman had risked everything for me, had faced a system, a town, a backward mentality to save me. If that wasn't being a mother, what would be? Time passed. 16 years old, 17. I finished high school with good grades. Encouraged by Mrs. Linda, I decided to continue studying. "You can be whatever you want, Mary. You have the whole world ahead of you." The whole world. What a difference from when I thought my world was limited to the 4 walls of the Yellow House. At 18, I took the entrance exam for law school in Louisville. I passed. It was the greatest joy of my life until then. I was going to study to be a lawyer to defend other Marys who hadn't had the luck to find a Mrs. Linda in their path. "I'm so proud of you," she said, tears in her eyes when the acceptance letter arrived. So proud. The move to Louisville was another big challenge. I had never left Riverdale. I had never seen a big city. I had never ridden a long distance ants bus. I was terrified but also excited. It was a new beginning, another chance. My nightmares, which had already decreased a lot, returned in the first weeks away from home. I dreamed that my father had escaped from prison and found me. I would wake up sweating, trembling. I would call Mrs. Linda from the payphone at the boarding house where I lived. "He can't reach you, Mary," she assured me. "He's in prison. He'll stay there for many years. You're safe." Gradually, college and the new city began to occupy me. New friends, new experiences, new pains too. But these were normal from adult life. Growing pains, not destruction pains. It was in college that I met Paul, tall, thin, with glasses, a journalism student. We met at a party at the student centre. We danced, talked, laughed. It was so easy being with him, so natural. When he tried to kiss me the third time we went out, I froze. My whole body remembered other hands, other touches, other moments. He noticed my panic, backed off immediately. "It's okay, Mary. We'll go at your pace. No rush." I told him a week later about the yellow house, about the broom, about the escape. I hadn't told anyone except those involved in the case and the therapist, but I felt I could trust him. He listened to everything without interrupting. When I finished, he had tears in his eyes. "You're the strongest person I've ever met," he said simply. I didn't feel strong. I felt broken, incomplete, always fighting against ghosts. But maybe he saw something in me that I couldn't see myself. Our relationship progressed slowly with a lot of dialogue, a lot of patience from him, a lot of work on my part in therapy to separate sex from violence, to understand that intimacy could be beautiful, consensual, respectful. We graduated in the same year, I with honours in law, he with a job offer at a newspaper in the capital. We got married in a simple ceremony in Louisville. Mrs. Linda came, of course. She was the one who walked me down the aisle. "Here I am giving you away to someone else," she joked. But there was a glint of concern in her eyes. "It's different, Mom," I assured her. This time, I chose. I chose. That was the big difference. For the first time in my life, I had the power of choice, of decision, of control over my own path. Our life in Louisville was peaceful for many years. I opened a small law firm specializing in family law. Paul grew at the newspaper, became an editor. We bought an apartment. We had 2 children, Anthony and Louise, a normal, healthy, happy family. Of course, not everything was perfect. The nightmares never completely disappeared. There were days when the memory came back full force, days when I couldn't bear even Paul's touch, days when I cried for no apparent reason. But they were increasingly rare and less devastating. Therapy, which I kept up for years, gave me tools to deal with the past without letting it control my present. In 1988, when my children were 8 and 6 years old, I received news that shook me deeply. My father had died in prison. Heart attack. I didn't know how to feel. It wasn't relief or sadness or anger. It was a strange emptiness, as if a part of my story had been closed without proper resolution. "Do you want to go to the funeral?" Paul asked. I didn't want to. I didn't need to. That man had been dead to me for a long time. 2 years later, my mother, who had served her sentence and was living in another town, tried to contact me. She sent a letter to my office asking for forgiveness, saying she was sick, that she wanted to see me one last time before she died. I was torn. Part of me wanted to tell her to go to hell. Another part, perhaps the part that therapy had helped to grow, wanted to understand, wanted to listen, wanted to close that cycle somehow. After much thought, I decided to go. Not for her, but for me. I needed to look her in the eyes one last time and tell her that I had survived, that I was well, that she hadn't managed to destroy me. I found a prematurely aged woman in a hospital room in Cincinnati. Terminal cancer, thin, yellow, sparse hair, almost unrecognizable from the authoritarian Elaine who had terrorized me in childhood. "Mary, you came," she said when I entered the room, the voice weak, broken. "I came, but not for you." We were silent for a while. "What do you say to the woman who brought you into the world and then allowed that world to become a hell?" "I know I don't deserve forgiveness," she finally spoke. I'm not even asking for it. I just wanted you to know that not a day has passed without me thinking about what I did, what I let happen. Why? It was the only question that mattered. Why did you let him do that? Why didn't you protect me? She looked away. I was afraid of him, of losing the little I had, the job, the house, the security. A pause. But that's only part of the truth. The other part is that I didn't love you as a mother should love. You weren't planned, weren't wanted, and I put that blame on you, not on me. It was wrong. It was terrible. I know that now. Her honesty caught me by surprise. I had expected empty excuses, not this raw confession. I thought I would feel something seeing you like this. I confessed. Satisfaction, maybe. Poetic justice. But I feel nothing. You have no power over me now. You're just a sick woman who's going to die alone. And me? I have a life, a family that I built, a career, a future. Tears ran down her wrinkled face. It's fair. It's more than I deserve. I left that room without looking back. She died 2 weeks later. I didn't go to the funeral. I didn't feel sorry or anger or resentment. Just peace. As if a circle had closed. Life went on. The children grew up. I became a grandmother. Mrs. Linda left us in 1995 at the age of 73, a peaceful death in her sleep. Without suffering, without drama. Exactly as she deserved. You were my salvation. I told her the last time we saw each other 2 days before she passed. No, Mary, you were your own salvation. I just showed you the way. Maybe she was right. In the end, it was my courage to speak, to report, to seek help that saved me. But without her, without someone who believed in me, would it have helped? When I retired from law practice at 60, I decided to do something different. I opened a small traditional candy shop on the central square of Riverdale, where I had returned after Paul passed away. The candies are from Mrs. Linda's recipes, who taught me everything she knew in the kitchen. Fudge, peanut brittle, peon pralines, candies from my second childhood, from the childhood that's really worth remembering. The shop became a meeting point. Many people come not just for the sweets, but to talk, to hear stories, to share theirs. And it's amazing how many of those stories echo mine. I began to realize that my case, unfortunately, wasn't so exceptional. That many women from my generation and from the following generations had gone through similar abuses. That silence was a prison shared by many. At 67, I accepted an invitation to give a talk about my story at the local school. It was the first time I spoke publicly about everything. I was nervous, scared, but also determined. If my story could help a girl find the courage to speak, it would have been worth it. That talk turned into an invitation for another and another. Soon I was traveling around the state speaking at schools, universities, support groups. My story, which for so long had been my shame, became my platform to help others. I created a support group in Riverdale, Voices in Silence we called it. Women of all ages from all social classes sharing experiences, healing together, strengthening each other. And now, at 71, I decided to make these videos to tell my story to an even wider audience. Because even after so many years, even with so many changes in society, there are still children trapped in yellow houses all over America. There are still monster fathers and mothers who turn a blind eye. There are still brooms in corners of kitchens that make girls tremble with fear. If you're watching this and you identified with any part of my story, I want you to know you are not alone. It's not your fault, and there is a way out. It may seem impossible now. It may seem like no one will believe you, that no one will help you. But I promise you, there is someone like Mrs. Linda out there, someone who will believe, someone who will extend a hand. The yellow house stayed in the past. In its place, I built a colourful life full of true affection, of respect, of dignity. You can too. And if you're watching and you know a child who shows signs of abuse, the sudden silence, the unexplained bruises, the constant fear, please be their Mrs. Linda. Ask, believe, help. you might be their only chance. Today, my shop in the square is still open. My grandchildren have already given me great grandchildren. The yellow house was demolished years ago. In its place, they built a small children's playground. Whenever I pass by there, I see children playing, laughing, free, and I think that finally that piece of land has found redemption. If you liked my story, please leave your like and subscribe to the channel. This helps more people find these videos to understand that they're not alone in the fight. Because if there's one thing I've learned in these 71 years of life, it's that human beings are incredible in their capacity for reconstruction. To turn ruins into palaces, to transform yellow houses of terror into colourful homes of love. Remember that Grandparents' Tales is doing a special 100 giveaway to celebrate reaching 10,000 subscribers. Just leave a constructive comment, like this video, and subscribe to enter. I am Mary Payne, victim who became survivor. Survivor who became warrior. Warrior who became storytelling grandma. And my story isn't over. As long as there's a child who needs to hear that there's hope. As long as there's a woman who needs to know that abuse doesn't define her. My voice will continue. Because freedom smells like wet earth after the rain, and after the most terrible storms comes the brightest sun. Until the next video.